Hey again everybody, it's Robert184, 2 R's 2 B's from YouTube and gundam.tk, and Sunday night, which means episode 7 of Gundam Age has just finished airing, and now it's time for my reenactment, synopsis, and review. If you watched last week's episode and saw what was coming up this week, you probably saw this kind of mysterious shape at the end of my review. Also, so far they're doing a pretty good job of giving away a little bit at the end, just teasing enough, especially which MSs are coming up without giving away too much story. So I will be watching them from here on in. And those of you who skipped the opening theme song may have missed a very important change to the opening, at least in silhouette form. The episode starts off with Flit being captured as he was arrested at the end of the episode with his Gundam in the hands of a bunch of Zakus. And as he's in the Dawn Voyage's mansion for the Zalam, he's asked, "Who are you?" And at just that moment, yes, Captain Grudek walks in and says he's just a kid, and a kid who gives me nothing but headaches. The important thing being that Grudek does not have his hat on, which brings me to the comment of the week from episode 6. I could not agree more. Back in the slums, Rillia is continuing to have coffee with Ewark, and they basically talk about what's going on, a little bit of backstory, how the Zalam and the Yuba can be going at this war for all this time, and what is the Federation doing, and basically ignoring it. Meanwhile, Emily decides that I've had enough of this, she's going to head off on her own. Vargas says you can't take the truck. Ewark offers his horse instead, and his daughter, who caused the whole problem in the beginning of the last episode, makes some sneaky eyes. Back at the mansion, Flit's imprisonment isn't so bad as he's being forced to sit down to dinner with Grudek and the Dawn, but he won't. He instead stands up and lectures him on the past, and that there's no need for them to be fighting so seriously, the whole short-sightedness. The most important thing is that behind the Dawn in the background is a picture, or the logo of Zaft from Gundam Seed, or, well, anyway, it's the Zalam equivalent, of course. But you really get the idea of the whole aristocratic nature, which really comes back all the way to the early days and why Zeon probably lost to the Earth Federation in the first place. Anyway, the Dawn says to him and flashes back to Wolf, "Will you give me the Gundam? And I would be willing to trade the warships and a bunch of cash," which certainly piques Flit's interest, and Grudek says, "No, we're not trading the Gundam." And then the Dawn's goons come in and whisper the news that the people he's dealing with are a captain that lost a photograph of his wife and child, and a son who lost both his mentor and mother to the UE. Once the Dawn leaves and back alone in the room, the two of them actually have a chance to sit down and talk, and Flit says, "I didn't realize that you had your loss," and we just get to see more of a hint, as if we haven't seen enough already, of just how driven Grudek is, and as he extends his hand to shake hands with Flit, he says, "You and I are the same, and we have the same mission, and hopefully there's going to be a better relationship between these two, because so far Grudek really hasn't had anything to do with his star pupil and best weapon up against the UE. Meanwhile, back on the truck, Emily notices that they have a stowaway in the form of Rillia, who attracts a whole bunch of street kids who say, "Hey, let's hop in this pickup truck and go occupy Zalam." And they stand in front of there, and they do what they do best, which is basically Emily just complaining, this time with the aid of a megaphone. However, their protest is short-lived as a Molotov cocktail goes flying into the courtyard, blows everything up, and all of a sudden we're going to have some old-fashioned sectarian violence on our hands. It's at this point we get introduced to my favorite debut character. We're going to have Racked Alphamel, who's basically the EFF equivalent, their leader, and I'm already going to call it that this is Patrick of Gundam Age. This guy's just a goof. He comes across as a goof the whole time. And you just know that these two sides are eventually going to set aside their differences, team up under Flit's leadership, and go focus on the real enemy, the UE. And I hope that they have as much luck as Patrick along the way. And during the commercial, don't forget you can see so many reviews of Gundam Age kits and lots of other Gundam stuff right here on my channel and gundam.tk. After the break, there's a fantastic scene where you'd swear that Ramba Ral was back from the dead, as basically the Dawn is walking down in a blue normal suit with two green guys beside him, and their normal suits look exactly like Zaku's should. Then the Elba and Zalam face off with a Zaku 1 shoulder charge from the two, but in the end, remember, it doesn't matter what kind of mobile suits these guys are showing off, even though they do have both a leader type and grunt type, because there aren't going to be any models. Now the kids are about to be in danger as there's another bomb, and all of a sudden, the Gundam is going to jump in and save them all. It's interesting to see the two sides face off, if only because we get to see a lot of flashbacks from Heat Hogs to the Mono Eyes on both sides, to both sides using an aristocratic structure. I would have said that these suits are more Gan-like as opposed to these ones, which are more Zaku, but you get the idea. Basically, it's good to see that a lot of the old hatreds and a lot of old things we've seen in Gundam came through, although I wonder if both of them aren't showing more Zeonic tendencies than what we've come to expect of the EFF. Well, you can guess that these two sides go at it pretty futilely, falling over each other, stepping into swimming pools. It's pretty dumb. Until you can guess that Flit's righteous anger flares up, he jumps in between them and says, "Who are we really supposed to be fighting?" Whereas the Dawn brings up a good point that you're the one who's still fighting over the silly things in the past, although he doesn't necessarily call his mother's death silly, but that they can hold on to their past hatreds as long as Flit and Grudek are doing the same thing. However, as the kids are being rushed away in a truck by Grudek, heading towards the base with Vargas and the kids in tow, you'll never guess, but there's Emily spying on the conversation that Flit is having with the opponents. This time they're doing it over a regular car stereo, so is there anything that Grudek can't hotwire to his exact needs? And as the action dies down, because Flit has talked some sense into the two sides and they decide that they will stop, in the background a new enemy approaches in the form of the Bacto with two Gafrans. Here the Bacto is going to be played by the Zetas because I don't have its AGs yet, and all of a sudden we're going to have to see if these two guys are smart enough to team up for the greater good. The Bacto breaks off his pursuit of the main enemy forces and decides to focus on the truck. I don't know why, maybe it's just because Grudek is that much of a danger, and just as he narrows in, all of a sudden Flit's gonna jump in and save everybody for the second time. This time it's not just a bomb, but he's gonna be fighting the Bacto and give Grudek time to get his mobile horse and get out of there. However, the Dodds rifle is gonna be completely useless, which puts Flit back in the exact same position he was in at the beginning of the last episode. Grudek's mad driving skills gets them back to the base safely, and there is Wolf in his Genoa's custom to save the day, or so you'd think, except he's still off in space, because who is it instead? Yes, it's the regular Genoa's who's going to come out and actually have his chance to shine this episode. Yes, after its dubious debut in episode 1, the Genoa's, not the custom, which they actually gave a few seconds in the last episode to mention was getting upgraded, squares off against the Bacto, and Flit has been in trouble because both his Dodds rifle and Beam Saber were useless, his shoulders cut open, he's got to get back to base, and if only there was something he could do to get an edge. As Flit makes it back to the base and collapses onto the hangar deck, Grudek heads to the bridge to go do what the boss is supposed to do, and as Vargas gets out of the car, they're in front of him, and don't think too much about it because really none of this stuff makes sense. The age system already has something produced just ready for Flit to throw on. And with bleak reports that the Zalam and the Elba have lost 90% of their mobile suits, you can guess that the Genoas with his butter knife is in some real trouble up against the Bacto. And just when he's about to get totally smashed with a very cool looking energy weapon in his chest, yes, it's time for Planet Titus. I mean Hulk. And if you think there's going to be more to the episode, there isn't. All there is some very cool stop-motion photography as they show off the Titus, and the Genoas cannot believe that this new Gundam with this much power is here to turn the tide of battle. All in all, I have to say that the beginning of the episode was another slow one, very similar to last episode. Seems like they've been on this colony for a long time already. Overall, the bad things that I didn't like, there were a few shots where they showed Grudek animated and he just looked terrible. This is a guy who should be awesome all the time, and in a few of the frames, I didn't think they did a very good job of that. I'm a little disappointed with some of the Zaco mobile suits. They just came across as being cannon fodder, and it was almost slapstick the way they were fighting so poorly. And yes, Flit's words were enough to stop them. You were thinking that the UE would show up and stop the battle, but instead, they actually stopped before the real enemy truly appeared. And the only other thing, yes, Emily did what she did best, overhear things and complain somewhat loudly. In terms of big picture stuff, I'm surprised that this advanced grade actually has enough articulation to vaguely shake hands, but yes, the relationship between Grudek and Flit and whether they can come to trust one another and work together ultimately is probably what's going to decide the fate of this first generation in age. And for me, I'm always happy to get more information about the old wars. It's good to see the old sides and think about the similarities to things we've seen in the past. Tons of homages. I love the fact Racked from Elma was my favorite character of the episode, and the Rambaral normal suits walking down the hallway was just fantastic. Throwing some Zaku 1 shoulder charges, heat hawks. I don't know what else you'd like. But I guess the real breakout character, the one who finally got a chance to shine, was Largan in his Genuis, who's been pretty much forgotten as the relationship between Wolf and Flit has developed. It's good to see Largan come out, show what a regular military pilot can do, and actually make the Genuis seem more than the cannon fodder that we saw in the beginning. But at the end of the day, this whole episode sort of came across, especially the end, as a Titus commercial, for better or for worse. So moving on with the story, I'm looking forward to seeing next week, and I hope that they are going to get off this colony. It already feels like they've been there a little bit too long, and I can't wait to see the assault on the UE because we should get a lot more answers, a lot more action, and hopefully start advancing the overall plot. And there was one character who was very noticeably absent. I wonder if he'll appear next week. Anyway, everybody, Robert184, gundam.tk, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of the video and the episode down below. Always great to hear from you. See you next Sunday. See, that's why I buy advanced grades.